and welcome to episode 149 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, and with me on the line from Denver, Colorado, it's the one and only Shane Beeps.
What's up, my friend Stan? They said 149 couldn't be done. It's the anniversary episode we've all been waiting for. We did it.
We are creeping up on year 3.
Oh my god. How? Who's paying us to do this?
Yeah, I still haven't been paid.
No, that's true. None of us have actually been paid for this podcast.
Yeah.
No, but it's good to see you all. I'm fresh off my boosty. I got that boost. I'm feeling good. Looking forward to Vegas. I'm ready.
Also with us, the Godfather, Dave Harbarger.
This intro is not about me. It's about the next person that we're going to talk about.
That's right. Returning to the show, hot off a reasonably good run in Saturday's Modern Challenge. It's Zach Ryl, a.k.a. ManaCymbal. Zach, welcome back.
Hey, congratulations on your upcoming sesquicentennial episode. Mm-hmm. I don't know how we do those things.
Sesquicentennial, yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's exciting.
Congratulations to you on your new guest, your new regular hosting spot over at Faithless Brewing.
Yeah, it's super, super exciting. I've been a fan of those guys for a long time. I've been part of their community. I was on their show for 3 or 4 times. So I'm just really, really happy to be able to join in with that. And Dan is just such an incredible person to talk to when I get to, and love those guys too.
Does he actually live in a cave? Have we determined yet if that's where Cave Dan comes from, or do we know?
Well, he's moved multiple times, so I assume wherever he's moved from, we should research the cave systems in the area to see if we can suss that out.
Do you want me to do this like my Cave Dan impression all episodes so you feel more comfortable? It's like, hello, Zach.
No. You know what? I love you guys to be yourselves 100%. You guys are incredible.
Zach, I actually have a little bone to pick with you.
Pick away.
The most recent Faithless Brewing episode that you were on, you said with the utmost confidence that Crimson Vow would not be legal at the Modern Tournament in Vegas, and we've since determined that may or may not be true. We just don't know.
So you're 100% right. So initially, everyone was thinking that it would be like day 0, nuclear meltdown. Everyone has to try to find the cards day of, when the stores were only legally allowed to sell them like that day.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Or you could get what you could on the opening weekend.
Or pre-release the weekend prior.
I've heard information one way or the other. I think it would be great for the tournament organizer to lay down the law and just say it either is or isn't. And I would lean on the side of isn't.
Yeah, the game is or isn't legal.
Well, guess what? None of that matters because it's not going to impact Modern that much.
Spoilers. Hey, no spoilers about later in the episode, Shane. I want more optimism out of you. Last week...
No, I'm amped. I think there's a lot of like cool cards for Arena. Like I know I'm gonna cast a lot of these on Arena. I'm gonna like them.
Okay.
Well, now I think AFR had about 4. No, that one had like two reasonable cards that made it in the format. Midnight Hunt had 3 or 4, so we can expect a whole 2% of the set to be viable.
That's all we need.
That's a good rate.
And if you want to hear Zach's takes on spoilers, listen to this week's episode of Faithless Brewing, where he will be talking about it, or potentially on Serum Visions as well, depending on what's going on there. But we have Zach on today to talk to us, as Stan mentioned, about his recent runs at the Modern Challenges that have been going on. And so we're going to do spoilers after we have Zach on for the breakdown. That's kind of the game plan today. Is that right, Stan?
That is right. I guess I'm not going to read this beautiful intro that I wrote. Thank you, Dave. Let's just hop right into housekeeping, because clearly that's what you want to talk about. Thank you to the newest patrons to join the Dive Down Nation. We got Whoosh. We got Thomas H. We got Daniel F. And we got James B.
Man, we're having a couple good weeks of new citizens getting their papers, coming through the borders of the Discord. Welcome.
Yeah, Whoosh, there it is. Thank you so much.
We've got a new review from Open Rev. I'm really glad, Open Rev, that we've got another casual dad spike in the fold. So thank you for being a listener and for the review.
All right, listen, all you moms and dads out there, we're recording on the first day of daylight savings time. If you have a kid, I feel your pain. I was up at 5 a.m. today because Junior thought it was 6 o'clock. He doesn't understand clocks yet. I don't know what's not to understand. It's just 24 hours in a day.
Brian has set up, Brian Madden, the co-host on Serum Visions, with there's a light in the kids' room that just if it's red, it's not time to go annoy mommy and daddy yet, and if it's green, it's okay. So if he wakes up,
does that work on infants?
Well, he's pretty young, so I believe it does, but maybe not on a 1-year-old.
I gotta tell you. This is some garbage. I got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we got the light, and we got the light that's got a happy sun on it. It's got a happy moon on it. They know moon time and they know sun time. Those kids, they don't care. They come in the room any day and they're like, "Dad, it's time for Scooby-Doo." And I get up and watch Scooby-Doo now, and I'm like, "Go to bed, man. It's 4:30 in the morning."
If you'd like to support the show and help us afford milk for our kids, find us over on Patreon, patreon.com/thedivedown. You can also support us while playing Magic the Gathering with a Mana Trader subscription. If you sign up for Mana Traders with coupon code TheDiveDown2021, all one word, you'll get 15% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. Thank you to everyone who's supported us thus far on either of those platforms.
And this week on the news desk, Stan, I think you wrote this breakdown, so we're going to have you do it. But I did want to say one thing before we get in here. We're recording this episode in real time with Zach this time, not 6 weeks ago, and then releasing the episode as the bonus. So some stuff has happened since that bonus episode was recorded and put out. It's a great bonus between Stan and Zach talking. But lots happened for you in the last couple of weeks, huh?
Yeah. Literally that weekend. I mean, I talked in that episode about going to a paper tournament. I went to that weekend, split the finals with Dom Harvey, who's a friend of mine. And then since then, Face to Face started their open series, which is kind of like SCG for Canada. So there's going to be 3 major tournaments, and I top 8'd the Saturday. And then I played in a Modern Challenge yesterday, which I believe that I won. We're still waiting on the results from that, but I get Stan's on the news desk, so I guess he'll tell me if I won or not.
Do they have point corrections like fantasy football?
I assume. I don't know. I've never done this before.
Hold on. Wait a second. Zach, I need to talk to my co-host. Just ignore us for 1 second. Don't listen to this.
I'm over here humming.
Did you know Zach won? I had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you just invited him on to be nice.
Oh, God.
Oh, this is awkward.
Be cool. All right, that's right. We're going to talk about Saturday's Modern Challenge in particular.
Yeah, and my biggest question for Zach actually is, how are you going to handle this on This Week in Modern when you have to talk about yourself?
Yeah, well, that's where it's really great that I've created alter egos for myself.
Right.
So yeah. I'm just going to do it like I do every single episode and read the name like it's someone that I don't know, because oftentimes it is.
Any chance that Gene Lanoir is going to have Zach Ryl on for a short interview to talk about it? Oh, man. We could see.
I could do that, but you guys have me on now, and I feel like he'd been scooped.
Well, You
could use the technology from the Michael Keaton classic Multiplicity and just have several.
I've already done it in the Cards on the Modern ban list music video that I got to show off on the stream. So I can definitely make it happen. I got a green screen.
All right, let's get into this. Saturday's Modern Challenge, 136 players. And though we only have the deck list for the top 32, we actually have the deck selections for all the players, thanks to Bamzing, Canister, and Doom Switch, all collaborating to get us basically an idea of what the metagame for this entire tournament looked like.
So, the way they actually do this is they watch the replays.
What?
Yeah.
Those are available still?
Yeah.
So people have been doing this in Vintage particularly for a long time. There's like a Vintage ELO project group or something like that. And I think there's one for Legacy that's been starting up too, which is why if you've ever seen those subreddits, they'll have these incredibly accurate, detailed charts with axes and little points and little fields around them. And I don't understand any of this stuff, but and the way they do that is they have a group of people who both play the challenges and then stay afterwards and collect all that data on at least archetypes. But I think even then they run it backwards because they can have a screenshot of every single matchup and who won. And since they know the archetype, they can extrapolate a sort of archetypical win percentage against each other.
Yeah. So I don't mean to digress. This is super fascinating. I had no idea that that's how they did it. Do you have to play in the Modern Challenge to see those replays?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you do. And you can only see them once the tournament is over. And because of the memory leaks in Magic Online, apparently, while they're collecting data, some people will have their client crash eventually, and then they won't be able to get back in. So they have to have enough people so that people can sort of grab all of the lists. because this is how we have to do things. Because this is what we'll do for data.
I appreciate the hustle.
Oh man, I can't wait until Wizard sends these people a note and tells them to cut it out, because that's what happened. That's what happened to Goldfish back in the day, wasn't it? When they were,
but Goldfish was compiling matchup data too. They were saying who wins in matchups. Yeah.
Anyway, congrats to you. No spoilers, but you did win this event, FYI, and congratulations.
Yeah.
Before we actually get into the top 8, let's take a quick look at the archetype breakdown for the entire tournament, since we have this data. The 2 most popular decks among everyone who submitted, everyone who signed up, 10 pilots each, were Black-White Hammer and Izzet Murktide. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, there was also a good number of Jeskai Murktide, right? Which, like, let's be real. Like, how different is Jeskai Murktide from Izzet Murktide?
So Jeskai runs Teferi. That's basically the main reason you're going for white.
Prismatic, right? Too.
I mean, Prismatic is the big reason.
Or did they move away? Are they still running both those cards, or are they?
They're running both the cards. It's usually Prismatic Endings in the main deck and Teferi in the side, but there's no established like one list. It's like, you know how for a long time with Blue-Red Murktide, people were just like, oh, well, they play their one main deck Spell Pierce. Well, they only have 3 counters. It's like there was a very stock list. Jeskai's not quite there, so there are people kind of mixing them in and out, but Prismatic Ending to get out under Chalice and Teferi for Teferi reasons are the 2 major reasons.
Teferi reasons.
Makes sense to me. Yeah.
Perfect. So, but by and large, Jeskai and Izzet are very similar decks. We saw like 16 Murktide decks then, which is quite a few.
I think that's what, in my mind, that's kind of what that means, which is interesting because for a while it felt like Murktide was pretty gone, and now in a wide field event like this, it's, that's what is, that's 12, 13% of the meta. 136 people, 16 people brought Murktide.
Well, they had a really good weekend last weekend, and you can see the confidence boost here kick in. So this Doom Switch and a small group of players were sort of trying to rework the sort of weaknesses of the deck or whatever, and the big switch was Consider over Thought Scour. As you guys did your due diligence last week, it was about a 50-50 split. I haven't looked at the top 32 of this one yet, but I wouldn't be surprised to see slightly more people on Consider. Because that seemed to be like a big development that maybe last weekend, even though they had a good weekend, not everyone was up to speed on it yet. Or maybe we see that Thought Scour did have some staying power. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah. We'll see. Stan might have some notes on that later. Black-White Hammer, do we have any thoughts on Hammer at this point? I mean, the most interesting thing we've seen with Hammer is that it started running Dark Confidant a lot more in the 2-drop slot for some card advantage, extra card advantage, I guess we should say. And that deck is still kicking it. I guess we'll see how well it converted to the 32 in the top 8. But
main deck Thoughtseize is more common now as well, and I think the biggest reason for that is the Force Color Sky Needle deck was such a nightmare for them. They basically had to know if they were going to have to play into a Fury or a Solitude or an Ephemerated, one of the two. It was just so devastating if they took the wrong line that it became almost necessary that they would have the Thoughtseize in the main. It was basically pre-boarding for the metagame. Like they were probably boarding into 2 to 4 Thoughtseizes anyway,
right.
And there were a wide enough number of decks that were sort of taking advantage of Hammer's vulnerabilities.
That makes sense. All right, next up on the list really is Blue-White Control. Still holding in strong, even though some of these other 4-color decks are popping towards the top of the list. The more Omnath control-y type of decks instead of Blue-White Control. But, this is still, 8% of the metagame or so is Blue-White Control. In the same bucket as the Jeskai Murktide with 6 entries was Amulet Titan. So out of the 132, that's interesting that we fall pretty quickly to 6 being the next line item we have here for decks. That feels like a pretty spread out metagame to me right now. But yeah, Amulet Titan moving back towards the top of the meta.
Yeah, again, it feels like a confidence boost. Like the players were there. These will all be seasoned Amulet Titan players for the most part, and they were just waiting for someone to give them the go that Amulet Titan isn't actually dead. Go figure.
Yeah, what is Amulet Titan hoping to overpower? Like the 4-color like Sky Needle type stuff or Blue-White Control, or like what are they hoping to win through? and take advantage of in this metagame, do you think, Zach?
Well, what I always heard was that the biggest problem deck for them were like Hammer Time and Blue Red Murktide. Because Unholy Heat was obviously a bit of a beast for them. They used to play exactly one Cavern of Souls, and I've seen them on everything and anything now. I got swan-songed by Dom Harvey post-board. I saw someone get Pact of Negation today in the challenge. Wafo Tafa got hit by that. So, there's time for them to trot out all of the toolbox cards that they have ever tried playing before and just see what sticks. But the core concept of Amulet Titan, it's still good enough. Like it just is.
Yeah, part of me also thinks that considering how greedy mana bases are at the top of the metagame right now too, that helps Amulet Titan because they don't necessarily have to wade through a ton of land hate right now. Part of me even thinks that maybe that's kind of like on the horizon as the metagame starts to shift, just because mana is so greedy, and if no one's playing Blood Moon's main, then Amulet Titan doesn't really have like this big red flag to worry about.
All right. Next up, with 5 players each, is Grixis Shadow and Temur Footfalls. It looks like we had, as far as the Footfalls goes, I don't see a bunch of your Rhinos decks down here lower on the list as well. So Grixis Shadow's having a little bit of a moment right now too. Why don't we start talking about that for a minute? I think, we've talked a little bit about decks that I would feel comfortable sleeving up right now, and Shadow's probably on my list just because of my past experience with it as far as the metagame goes. But why is Shadow coming back, do we think?
Well, just because Corey won with it, I imagine. So people were like, oh yeah, I guess I should try this again. But I think it's a perfectly fine deck, and Dress Down's a perfectly interesting card with a lot of flexibility, especially in this. I think this metagame is a lot of things it can shut down. So why not give it a shot?
Yeah, I think Dress Down in particular is kind of a big upgrade for Shadow, and people are being reminded of that, perhaps in part because of Corey's win. I was playing with Grixis Shadow this week a little bit, and the amount of times that I got to play Dress Down defensively as a way to like clear a board of Constructs or shut down a Solitude or whatever the Elementals decks are doing was really powerful. And then if you can just play a Dress Down that replaces itself and actually buys you a turn in the process, sometimes you can line yourself up where you swing with a 4/4 Shadow or something, and the coast seems like it's clear, and then you can also Dress Down for the kill. So being able to play this like really modular spell that protects you and also gets you the kill, I think is something that can support this type of, mid-range aggressive archetype.
Totally forgot that Corey's win was this week. I feel like that was like 12 days ago like 2 weeks ago for some reason. All right, and then Temur Footfalls, still popular, still good. People are still having success with it. I know that Doomwake's been working back down to 60 card versions, is what he's been sharing on Twitter a lot lately. So,
but I think that he's sort of backtracked on that and said that the Urian version is stronger. Certainly for my money, I played against the 60-card version of Rhino, and it basically seemed to be them going back to playing 4-color Rhinos, which was done before with Teferi, and this doesn't really feel like... Now it's just got Omnath, and it's not playing Solitude, and it just isn't doing anything better than... the reason that Temur Rhinos became the better one was just like... playing Teferi in your Rhinos deck just didn't end up being worth it, and having a more stable mana base that could play Blood Moon in the sideboard was... So I don't expect to see 4-color Urian-less Rhinos stick, but who knows? Some people are stubborn. But I think your Rhinos is a stronger, more viable, more relevant deck, but maybe only because it was running against Sky Noodle. We'll see.
Yep. Speaking of Sky Noodle, 4-color Ephemerate is in our next bracket with 4 players bringing it, along with Living End and Burn with the 4 players deck. So getting towards the tail end of the meta that we're kind of tracking here. Living End had a little bit of a breather over the last couple of weeks, and now in the broader metagame, there's still a good number of people bringing it. I'm a little surprised that there's only 4 people on the Ephemerate decks, but honestly, there's a pretty hard cap on that deck on Magic Online right now, which might be part of what's going on with some of these deck selections as well, because now that Solitude has gotten super expensive, and the deck is, I think, 1,800 tickets or 1,500 tickets or something crazy like that. Like, it's well outside of even the top tier mana get Mana Trader subscriptions. So we'll see. And then Burn, there's been a bunch of people in our Discord who've been playing Burn lately, and I think having reasonable success with it. So I think it's still good. It's in the same way that Amulet Titan, comes back. People get some confidence in it, and they feel like they can get their old deck back out. Or once we see how the metagame shakes out, they know what little tweaks to make to it. And Burn's been around for this whole cycle, and seems to still be there. And then our 3 drops. Yawgmoth, we had 3 more Hammer decks here, so that brings the total number of Hammer up to 13. Jund Saga at 3, Blue Moon, which I'm going to assume is Murktide, but like the bigger control-y versions, or are these ones that aren't even running Murktide?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Like Timu is playing Kiki Jiki.
What? For real?
Timu is playing Kiki Jiki.
Timu does whatever he wants. He's playing 2 Kiki Jikis, like 2 Deceiver Exarchs, and 1 Pestermite. Like,
yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's not an exact quote of his list, but like that's the kind of stuff that he does all the time.
Yeah. Get people out of nowhere. And then we have Tron, Belcher, and Esper Reanimator rounding out that kind of last group.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome decks. I mean, these are all established things. It's interesting when you look at this whole list of things, especially with the way that we've been talking about the metagame lately on the show. Like, there's nothing that's too much of a surprise here down through these top, 15 decks that are here. But the next tier, 2 people ran 4-color creativity, including you, Zach.
That was me. That's what I do.
Who was the other person that ran it?
That was Ting Feng Wan, who, if you check my Stream Decker, it's my current deck list is nicknamed Tweak Feng Wan because I took his deck list and then I tweaked it
awesome.
to my own.
Oh, that's how that worked. Okay.
Yeah, it was very in-depth. It's complicated. I had to explain it.
Nomenclature is important. Brand is important,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, Stan, do you want to take us through the top 32, how things converted, what went from there?
Yeah. Thanks for taking us through the field. In terms of the top 32, the most popular deck only had 3 pilots, and that was Amulet Titan. Put up the most results, including the 8th place finisher.
Wow.
A lot of 2s, though. So Living End is there, Grixis Shadow, Blue-Eye Control, 4-color Omnath, Hammer, Ephemerate, Yawgmoth, and Murktide. Those are our 2-fers. And then everything else was a 1. We had a big other category among the top 32, including the Kiki Jiki deck I mentioned. Merfolk made it into the top 32. Affinity made it in top 32. We had a Grief Blade, an Orzhov Grief Blade deck in there. And only one Jund Saga deck made it to finish 6-2 or better. I do think it's worth noting Hammer, Blue-White, and Murktide all had huge drops.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a lot of drop-offs since they all only hit the two of each. Mm-hmm. That's big.
Yeah.
This is the kind of information that I think comes out when you're able to look at conversion rates and able to actually say, like, when we look at these top 32s all the time, and there's, 100, 200 people sometimes in these challenges, and we honestly have no idea what the percentage of decks they were in the field. And so we see something like 3 or 4 or 5 like Hammer decks or something like that. We're like, oh my gosh, it's so many. But we see there literally could be 15 plus like Hammer decks or 15 plus Murktide decks starting off in like a field of 130. And so it's a little bit less impressive when you're just like, yeah, you throw enough darts, you're going to hit the bullseye a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah, another big drop-off. Footfalls, no copies in the top 32. Just could not convert. And then likewise, half the Amulet players technically went 6-2 or better. We went from 6 to 3 in terms of the overall field into the top 32. So maybe it was a good day to bring Big Green Giants.
I think maybe there's also another point here in that you guys last week referred to Modern as a skill format, and that it really heavily rewards people who are on the same deck, who have been on the same deck, who stick with the same deck, who have, the reps both in the current metagame and on a deck long term. A lot of these decks are newer. I don't know if it necessarily means they have less room for that, but I will say, like, anytime someone says something a bit reductionist about Hammer Time, like, oh, Hammer Time's easy, Teamer Footfalls is easy, any of these decks are easy, they're just not. Like, once you actually get out there and start playing the games, they're just not. And that level of skill that you can leverage, the level of preparedness you can have for the metagame, the consistency with your sideboarding, all of these things add up really, really fast to people who are able to, like, consistently X2 and those who are not. these newer decks that are popular, have a lot of representation, may be an easy draw for people who are less experienced at playing these high-level tournaments, because they know that the deck is good, so they choose it, and they will, eventually develop that level of skill. Whereas the long-time players of decks, that they get to put themselves out there, and we see a lot of the same names all the time.
Yeah, totally true. I mean, the challenges are always filled with like the regulars, right? And it's so weird to be able to walk into a tournament that's, kind of like a medium-sized PTQ size field, right? In paper, and it's filled with world champions. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm going to play against Canister and Spike and you and like
Javier Dominguez.
Yeah, Javier Dominguez and Gabe Nassif is going to be there, like Hall of Famers. So
Guillaume Wafo Tapa,
it is these are some of the hardest tournaments. The one thing I was going to say about the skill format thing that I think people, it's one of the great things about Modern. I think once you get into it, is just, we have some people that are newer in the Slack who have joined, which is great, or in the Discord, which is great, because they're newer to Modern and sharing their games and sharing their experiences, and kind of being like, wow, there are just decks that kill me on turn 3 or kill me on turn 4, and it's like most of the field is that. And so the beauty, I think, of Modern and the skill of Modern, is that understanding of the meta and how someone's going to kill you on turn 4, and then what's going to happen when you keep them from killing you on turn 4, and what you can do when someone stops your turn 4 kill too, like all those kind of things. And I think that's like the part of it that's really skill intensive, is that the edges are so tiny and the decisions are so, like fetching the wrong land or fetching at the wrong time is the thing that kills you, So that's the thing that I think is really fun about Modern, and what I would encourage people who are a little bit newer to the format to kind of hang in there to get that next level understanding, because that's where I think the whole thing really opens up to you, and you go like, okay, I get it now. And, in some ways that's when Magic becomes a bigger game than just like, I'm going to play my cards and in the order doesn't matter or the thinking doesn't matter. Like,
I still prefer to play that way.
Yeah. Well, we know.
All right. Let's
how many wins do you have?
They say step 1 is have a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And mine is cast my cards.
LSV.
I do have these full art Ragavans, so I'm probably going to be winning a lot, right?
Did you
pay to win.
I saw you on Facebook looking for a matching set. Did you finish up your set? Did somebody help you out?
I did. Someone helped me out.
Probably for like $60 or something like that, the usual stand deal.
Well, no, what I tried to do was trade 2 regular Ragavans for 2 full art Ragavans, and someone did that where I only had to pay the difference in market price.
Oh, perfect.
That's nice.
There you go.
I feel like Ragavan's on the downswing, though. They might be getting you good on that one.
Shut up.
The art is nicer, though. I do like the art better.
The art is so much better.
It's so much better.
Yeah.
All right, 8th place, Nade, Amulet Titan. Fairly stock, but here it is. We've talked about it. Let's move on. 7th place, Khaled 0 on Jeskai Control featuring Kahira. The only red cards are 2 copies of Fire Ice. No wear and tear.
Interesting.
Practically otherwise identical to a blue-white control deck.
Okay.
There was Hey Pharaoh was the one, I think, who recently popularized the Fire Ice build, and at the Face-to-Face Open there were multiple successful pilots that either top 16'd or top 8'd playing that exact setup. So something about that in particular the blue-white players really, really like.
Do you think you can pinpoint what it might be? Like, is it the fire side, or is it just tapping down someone's land?
You know what? I honestly, I will tell you as someone who's currently playing a full set of Fire Ice, that fire helps immensely against Yawgmoth, against Hammer Time, and it can even help you in the Cascade matchups sometimes in the early game where you're not really set up to counter on turn 2, but you can at least maybe ice down a land so they don't get to Cascade on.
Right.
That little bit sometimes matters a lot. Fire Ice is an incredibly flexible card, so it's really hard to nail down exactly what these guys want out of it. I haven't been playing those decks like huge number of reps, but I assume that some of these reasons against some of these matchups are the problems they've been running into.
It is a card having a moment right now, though, that's for sure.
6th place, Twinless Twin, Grixis Shadow featuring Luris. This one, kind of stock. It looks almost identical to Corey Baumeister's deck that won the Invitational at SCGCon. We were talking about Dress Down earlier. After playing this version of the deck, I almost feel like Temur Battle Rage will just never see Modern play again because of how effective Dress Down is at replacing what that card did while also doing a whole slew of other stuff against potential opponents.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that you played TBR was because you had to have the implied threat of a trump card, right? Like I win combo. And Dress Down gives you enough of that, like you said, and has better utility and also draws a card if you have to do that. It's also recyclable with Luris and da-da-da-da-da. So,
Yeah. I do think the biggest problem will probably be how popular Solitudes are. As long as there's 4-color Ephemerates, Elementals decks, and I think, whether or not Your Rhinos remains popular, but if people are playing more and more Solitudes, that's just such a good trump to whatever Grixis Shadow wants to do, any Shadow deck really, that I can kind of see a little bit of an ebb and flow between those two forces.
I don't know. Corey B is on record as saying that with his game plan on it and sideboarding plan and that he has a very good record against the deck, against control decks with Solitude.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just a matter of maneuvering yourself into a way where you can always have Dress Down for protection or counter spells or anything like that. And I think that it goes back to good players know how to win matchups, especially if they come in understanding their game plan and their opponent's game plan.
Good players. I hope to be one day.
Speaking of a good player, in 5th place, Aspiring Spike on Black-Red Darcy mid-range featuring Luris. 2 Dauthi Voidwalkers main with 3 main deck Turok. I saw him tweeting about it, saying that Turok was doing a lot of work for him this day.
Because I guess it's good against Hammer, good against Solitude, because of Pro White.
Yep. And also had 3 Den of the Bugbear among the lands. This was another deck that I would, when we were talking in Slack about decks that I would choose. I was thinking about myself plus mid range. A moment ago I said Grixis Shadow would be good, and I was kind of like, I wonder if Black Red will ever come back. And then Aspiring Spike thought it was time to bring it out too. So I loved this deck over the summer. I'm glad to see it back. I hope it's somewhat viable because I think this is a good version of these mid range decks too, especially if Jund is getting a little too tricky or too greedy to be good at the moment.
Zach, did you play against Everett by any chance?
I did. I think it was in round 8. It was right before the top cut. I was at 6-1. He was at 7-0.
Who won?
I did in spectacular fashion because I was incredibly lucky. Both games, he had me at a point where he had Thoughtseize or Inquisitioned my hand. I had no Indomitable Creativity, and both games I top decked one and put him in a position where he could never ever win, and he scooped very quickly. It was like a 10-minute match, which was won not at all by skill. Spike's an amazing player. He navigated the game very well, and despite all the people screaming at me to do so in Twitch chat, I did not jam an Indomitable Creativity into his obvious Kolaghan's command, which he then played.
That's funny. Yeah, the only reason I even ask is because when you were on for the bonus, you said that was one of your worst matchups as a creativity
player.
It is,
and in the top 8, I played against Grixis Luris, which is also a terrible matchup. I should not have won either of those. So I'm sure we'll get to that in a minute.
4th place, Coco Lopez on Blue-White Control featuring Kahira. I do want to point out, though, although this deck list is quite stock, if you're familiar with what Blue-White Control looks like these days, in addition to the one of Rogran Triome that a lot of these Azorius decks are running to make their prismatic endings a little better, this copy also had a breeding pool, raising the potential, ceiling of your prismatic endings to 4 colors.
Okay.
Should you want to maybe remove a Jace or an Omnath,
right,
or something else that's big.
I likely think that was for Omnath more than anything else, as far as things that are floating around in Modern right now, right? Give you an out to Omnath in case you need it, if you don't have your own Solitudes around.
Yawgmoth, maybe.
Yeah, Yawgmoth too. Yeah, there's only so many 4-drops, but that's interesting to see. 3rd place,
Heir of Elendil 15 on Grixis Darcy featuring Luris.
Is that what we call this deck now? Or are we just repeating what Bamsing said?
I think you could do worse than repeat what Bamsing said.
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, we steal his information, so might as well use his nomenclature.
Bamsing is the shoulders on which all modern podcasts rest on right now.
Yeah.
Any modern podcast he records on Sunday night. So I know Dominaria's judgment is also, we owe a lot to Bamsing.
So this is, again, one of those decks that's just black-red. I mean, it's just a black-red base with a little bit of blue Snapcaster kind of stuff. So it's like the Grixis version of that mid-rangey deck. I find these a lot harder to play personally, but maybe I'm just at a point in my life where I can't like level ahead on people with the blue cards at this point. So I prefer the simpler black-red ones kind of and Jund at this point. But I have seen this deck. It's nice to see this deck kind of come and go. But mid-range contingent of this top 8 is pretty strong, actually.
Yeah. So this deck is like Grixis Shadow minus shadows, and I wonder if that's also a hedge against Solitude, which Corey might know how to play against Solitude, but I think that's a pretty scary card for a Shadow Pilot. And this just doesn't have to worry about life total quite as much, or at least about managing that life total to have threats. All right, second place, Bellfly, Living End. Looked fairly stocked to me, though I did notice this time this player had a couple main deck copies of Foundation Breaker, which seems like this really cool tech against Chalice of the Void or I don't know, Ensnaring Bridge. Just having like this out to the artifacts that can actually hate out the Living End combo seems cool.
I would say one really important thing here is that Bellfly, I think, has done well with this deck before, but this is not the Living End that you normally think of. This is not Living End with black. I mean, it is playing black because it's playing Living End, but this is the Teamer Living End build, which has been successful a couple of different times. It was playing like 3 or 4 main deck Endurance, like Deadshot Minotaur instead of Architects of Thought. It's got a bunch of very different choices. And the idea being that it's like less of a combo deck like Living End is normally, the black Living End deck with Grief, and slightly more of a deck that can just play Bonecrusher Giant, Brazen Borrower, and like it's got a lot more reasonable casting costs, a lot more 3s, 4s, and 5s than the 6s and 7s that you see in the Grief version. It's also not 2-for-1ing itself on Griefs in the hope that their Living End can punch through right afterwards. So
it's got subtlety and fury as well. In addition, so it's got 8 of the pitch elementals, 2 fury, 2 subtlety. So it has some more interaction than these decks kind of have as a result of that. And you get your elementals after evoking them in the graveyard. You get your Foundation Breaker in the graveyard, so that stuff comes back if you need it to, which I think is cool. Yeah, this is an interesting version of this.
Yeah, and it's done well before, and it has never caught on in popularity. I think it's because it's a lot more difficult to sort of figure out and pilot than the more linear Living End.
But I think the thing that's interesting about this is that it sort of looks like a Rhinos deck. Like it sort of looks like a Crashing Footfalls, but it's just Living End instead. Yeah, exactly. So that was the thing that I always thought was interesting about the difference between Living End and the original Footfalls decks, is that there's a lot more play in the Footfalls decks. And so now here's a version of Living End that does the same thing. If you want it, if you want to play Living End and be interactive and have a different kind of game, you got it. That's cool.
All right, the moment we've all been waiting for. The first place winner and deck, ManaCymbal, aka Zach Ryl, aka
He's
our
the guest of the podcast. He's a guest, right?
Yeah. I know him.
Zach, you've been here.
I know me.
4-color creativity. First of all, Mazel Tov. You won.
Gracias.
So here's your chance, albeit briefly, to not be humble. How amazing do you feel?
Yesterday
You seem pretty amped.
Yeah, yesterday I just felt numb. To be perfectly honest, which was better than the last time I got like a several 100-person raid when I was in top 8 and immediately died. Yeah.
What does one do immediately after winning the Modern Challenge?
What I did was I remembered that I had a tiny bottle of champagne in my fridge. I grabbed that one out, got myself a coupe glass, old-fashioned, old school. Nice. If you ever see a picture of someone drinking champagne in the 1920s, you can have your little coupe glass.
Right.
And poured that out on stream a little bit. Played one more match of the league that I had queued up already.
Oh my God,
while drinking
back
champagne.
into it.
And then I went for a 5-mile run because I hadn't gotten any exercise all day and I was feeling lethargic.
That's the most adorable thing I've ever heard. I got to be honest. You had the right size champagne to just be like, all right, this is a me moment. I'm doing this. That's like an ad. That's like a television ad. It's so perfect.
When you're in the mood to celebrate, but there's only one of you.
It's time for tots.
I will say, because you're here, I'm really eager to just kind of hear what this tournament was like for you. What was your record in the Swiss? What was that like?
7-1. So for those who are fans of my channel, etc., I love streaming challenges, but Saturday has become very crowded in the streaming challenge world.
Sure has.
Doomwake, Spike, Yellow Hat, and Canister and Demonic Tutors are all regularly streaming their Saturday challenges. So what I told my fans and people who care about my content is like, listen, I'm pushing for this partner thing on Twitch. I need good average numbers. And if I spend 5 hours streaming a challenge to 20 people, it's just not good for me right now. It sucks because I want to share it with them all. I really, really, really do. And someday maybe I'll be able to do it all the time as I did previously. However, I can go back through the leagues and the replays and do it that way. So I think about at 5-0 was where I was, 4 or 5-0 when I went live. So I do have a tournament report that I'm working on that should be out by the time this podcast goes out. But I did abbreviate it in the tweet, one of my tweets. So I played against Yawgmoth and 4-color Rhinos. I played against Belfi, and I played. There would have been 2 more matches off stream.
You played against Spike.
I did. Well, that one was on stream. There we go. Okay, so round 1 Yawgmoth, round 2 4-color Rhinos with no Urian. Round 3 was Spider Space on Oswald Death and Taxes with Urian, 80 card. Oswald Death and Taxes, a list that I inspired him to make because he was watching me play a Oswald Urian deck on stream. Belfi on Living End was round 4. Round 5 was 1 Titan player. Round 6 was another Titan player. One of them was Leviathan 102. Blue-White Control was the 7th round. This was my only loss of the entire day, was to top 8ist on Blue-White Control, Coco Lopez. Blue-White Control is normally a very good matchup for this deck. I was surprised that they just bulldozed me 2-0, but sometimes it just goes that way. And then I was at 6-1 and I got queued against Spike. And even though I knew, quote unquote, that I was locked for top 8, that was a very uncomfortable experience. But since I 2-0'd him in spectacular fashion because it just felt like my deck just didn't want to lose. It was like, listen, whatever you need to draw to beat this guy, that's going to be your next card. And then that's what happened. And yeah, and at that point, I was just riding that high and just launched through the top 8, where I had it might have been a rematch against Titan, or maybe I played all 3 of the Titan players. And then the terrifying run-in with Grixis Luris, where I think when they led on game 1 and I kind of figured out that they were on Grixis Luris, I was like, oh, I'm never going to win. Hooray. But somehow I did. And then the rematch against Living End, where I felt like I had been very lucky to win the first time, and I think I got very lucky to win the second time. But we got there.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. It was intense. It was very intense. Yeah. A lot of challenging matchups, a lot of great players.
It does sound like, you ran somewhat hot. Were there any specific challenges you had to overcome that, with the exception of the Spike matchup, that you felt like maybe you had to win from behind or do something really stellar just to get ahead?
I mean, I'll have a screenshot of it. I think I already have a screenshot of it. The very first round I won, the end of the game, they were at 1 life. I was at 5, and they were able to hit me for 4 on the battlefield. So they had like a grist tick down with the -5 ability that was going to deal 6 to me, that took me from like 11 to 5, and then what they had on the battlefield could only put me to 1, and I ended up killing them on the crackback. I mean, just the whole day there was a lot of close calls. I mean, in the quarterfinals, it's on stream that the Amulet Titan player went something like turn 1 Amulet, turn 2 Amulet, Amulet, Explore, Explore, Explore. No Titan pass.
No.
They had 8. I think they had 18 potential mana. Like, we were counting it up on stream. I'm like, I think they have 18 mana, and they played 3 Explorers, and then they didn't find anything past the turn back with 3 Amulets in play.
They're like, we're going to draw into something here. I know it. And then nope. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't fault them for that keep. So, I mean, there were places where I was lucky. There was places where I played, tight. Indomitable Creativity is a very interesting card to play because you can not only target your own stuff, but you can target your opponent's stuff. One of the match win against Titan in round 6, I believe, came down to a moment where I had to Creativity my 2 creatures and their Titan. And if they flipped into another Titan, I would lose. However, I hedged that between the Azusas, Dryad Elysian Groves, Arboreal Grazer. Dryad also would have been bad too, because I'm not sure if they had a Valakut in their hand at that point or not, whatever. that between all the other creatures they could flip into, I would probably be okay, and then I needed to make that choice. And then I forgot that they're a Saga deck, so they flipped into a Pithing Needle, and I won.
I mean, I didn't even realize that about creativity. So, we have not talked about this deck very much in the past.
X red sorcery. You destroy X target creatures or artifacts, and the controllers of those cards flip through their own deck until they hit that many artifacts and or creatures and put them into play. So artifacts or creatures go in, and artifact or creature comes out.
That's wild.
It doesn't. Yeah, and
how often? I was gonna say, how often do you use it in a offensive way? Because like I'm much more used to when I played against this on Magic Online or on Arena, where people are really like holding it tight as like a combo piece that they were trying to go into something. Do you feel like you have to kill something? I mean, because it's powerful in that sense to be like, I'm going to fire off my combo and kill your Titan is big.
I do it all the time.
Okay.
Common targets are Murktide Regent, sometimes an Ensnaring Bridge against Etron, maybe. You can kill anything, any creature, any artifact, which is one of the things that makes this deck so good, in my opinion, or makes it good at what it does, is despite the fact that there's a combo kill, most things that people list that they want to try to bring in to get you just do not work, because of all the cards that just go into this list to make it work. I mean, you've got Prismatic Ending, Prismari Command, and the creativity itself, and Teferi that just solve almost anything in combination.
Yeah. It's interesting too to see this kind of like the payoffs are Sarah's Emissary is in here as well, and it's kind of like it's just an interesting different take on like a Reanimator almost. Like it feels like it's sort of like a Reanimator shell, but you're doing different spells and different cards and different payoffs. But yeah.
Well, every time I try to play Reanimator instead of this deck, I hate my graveyard being attacked. And the thing about this deck is it's very difficult to attack what you're doing. Grafdigger's Cage doesn't work because for some reason Indomitable Creativity puts the cards into exile and then onto the battlefield. So Grafdigger's Cage just doesn't work because of that.
Yep.
Draenith Magistrate, a Hammer Time player, brought that in against me today, and I don't know why they did that. That doesn't work against anything. So yeah, it's good at what it does, and it's very hard to attack, with the downside being that it's, a little less powerful, a little more clunky. You play it like a slow tap-out control kind of deck. So this new 4-color Omnath is kind of like the combo-free version of this deck, if that's any kind of comparison. So
did I see you tweeting about this the other day, that someone talked to you about this being like Splinter Twin?
So I mean, I talked about this with Shane on the episode that I did with him.
Oh, right, that's right.
At some point, someone mentioned, they're like, you're describing this deck as a lot like Splinter Twin, except the shell for it, instead of being I'm going to say the word tempo deck, is a tap out control deck with Wrenn and 6, Teferi, now Jace the Mind Sculptor, Nahiri, and a bunch of cards that sort of either remove hard to remove card types, protect you, or there's even 2-for-1s in the form of Fire Ice or Prismari Command.
Definitely. So we talked a little bit about kind of like decks that don't have it against you. The decks that you fear the most, you said that you fear kind of like red-black core decks. Why is that? Is that because of Kolaghan's Command, or is that because of some other and discard, or some other things? Yeah,
I mean, particularly Kolaghan's Command, but I would say it's the black-red Luris core decks, Mardu, Grixis, and black-red, just the black-red, and then blue-red Murktide. And the biggest two dangers about those decks is that they have lots of cheap interaction, very plentiful, and they can put together a pretty quick clock while still interacting with you. And that's the hardest part. And the black-red ones, especially Grixis, are the worst because they interact on the stack. They look at your hand and make sure exactly what's coming, so they can play around you perfectly in theory. And they put a clock into play that usually costs 1 to 2 mana and, consistently generates them some kind of value. With the upside being that sometimes, as in the top 4 match, you get to cast something like Fire on them on turn 2 and blow up their Monkey and the Dragon's Rage Channeler that hasn't flipped yet.
Totally.
Yeah, so you have the tools to beat them. It's just very stressful, and they are more than the best setup. Whereas on the flip side, one of the easiest possible matchups out of all the top tier decks is Hammer Time. This deck has an amazing Hammer Time matchup. I think in competitive challenge level play, I have something like a 13-2 record against Hammer Time.
Fire and Ice is big there. Prismari Command, I'm sure, is big there.
Prismari Command, Prismatic Ending, and in most cases, you can board wipe them so that like every turn they're only playing like 1 or 2 creatures, and you kill both every turn.
Right.
Or you just get to a point where you're just like, I'll just hold up interaction. Your creature doesn't bother me, and if it has a hammer, then I will kill it.
Right. Yeah, and you can even actually kill Hammer with creativity, as we just talked about, if you need to for some reason. So
sure can. Think it might have been my match against Will Kruger in the challenge that was like one of the PTQs. Mm-hmm. But there was one time where I played creativity for like, I think it was 4, and 2 of it was on my creatures, and 2 of it was on some of their things. And I think I was killing a Pure Steel Paladin and a Cranial Plating. Because they could move the cranial plating, so I had to kill it instead of the creature it was attached to.
Right.
And then they flipped into some other stuff. And it was funny because people were like, what if they have a second cranial plating? I'm like, well, then they'll get me. I will be very dead if they have a second cranial plating. But nobody plays a second cranial plating, not even Crusher Bot.
Yeah. So, big picture here. So this is it's an awesome achievement. What do you think you've learned in this particular run? Like, I know you've made top 8s before, I think I remember, right? And like we said, you had some recent paper success as well. Like, what do you think getting to the end, what do you think you learned about, Modern, or learned about kind of what it takes to get to the end of an event like this? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I've heard it said in a lot of different ways. Anyone who's sort of studied being a performance professional or a high-level performance in general, the way I was dealing with the whole end of it was every single match I was like, it's probably over after this one, but I'm going to just play this match that's in front of me. I was never thinking about how much further in the tournament I was going to go. That just didn't matter at all. And knowing that I'd been doing it long enough that even when Spike lost out and he sent me this raid of like 1,500 people, whatever it was, and they were all watching me, I don't feel like I felt particularly different at that point, because I just got into that state of mind on that day. And it's not always easy to do, but where it's like the only thing that mattered was the match in front of me. Maybe it was the 4 or 5 hours I was playing with like before I started up the stream that prepared me well for that. I'm not sure. It'll be hard to recapture the magic, but I definitely know the feeling was like just very focused. And even people who have been in my channel for a long time, they were like, hey, that the version of Zach who was on yesterday was like that. Was that the real you? And like ManaCymbal just a persona? Because usually you're a lot more goofy, and yesterday you were shockingly focused. I don't know what happened, but I'll try to recapture it with some of that, because I know in my first top 8 and other top 8s, I've been a lot more nervous and a lot more, whatever. And this time it was just like, no, we're in it. Let's go. Yeah.
Well, you're a musician, right? I mean, obviously, yes. ManaCymbal, yeah, and like you've performed like professionally, and so
sure.
that's a state you get to when you like.
Absolutely.
When you know your music, when you know the chart, and you're like, okay, this is how the performance is going to go, and like you're in the moment, you're really just like living it.
The more you do it, you get to the point where it's like, well, even if you don't know the chart, you're so comfortable with the rest of the process that you can put all your remaining energy on the only things that you do need to care about, right? So if it's like an unfamiliar piece of music, or someone in the band is sick, or someone in the audience is being really rowdy, like you have enough headspace was the term that my old drum teacher would use to refer to it, as like, you're not overwhelmed. You're working at a totally comfortable level, and when something spikes up that's unexpected, you have enough focus to spare on it and not worry about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I haven't gotten this far into an online challenge, but I have like one PTQ top 8, and it was the same type of thing that happened to me when we were playing it, which was just kind of like, okay, I'm 5-1. Suddenly I'm actually making a run for the first time ever in my Magic career. I'm just going to concentrate on what I'm doing right now and just try to stay in the moment, because that's how you just have to play, and then whatever happens. For sure.
Try to lean on good habits. One of the biggest things is knowing how to make mistakes, especially with Twitch chat around. It can be like, anyone who's telling you Twitch chat is a competitive advantage has never been in that position, because they are lying bald-faced to you. It's like 90% of it is just noise. Like 8% of it is information that is just going to lead you wrong because they haven't been paying enough attention, or they're not familiar with what you're actually trying to do. And the 2% that's useful, like, you already know that. You already know that the part that's useful. You'll be fine.
And it's also on your screen for 2 seconds, because it goes by with all the icons and stuff. Yeah.
And when you make a mistake, just let it go. Like, you'll just see me on the stream, especially in those moments, like, because it's not as much of a learning environment as my stream tries to normally be, where we'll talk about the mistake that I made and why it's important and the ramifications as we go through the game. No, it doesn't matter at all. Once you made the mistake, just keep going with the game. Don't get hung up on it. Don't double down onto the mistake. Like, just play as if that wasn't you, or that wasn't the game you're playing. Play the game that's in front of you and keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, like we said, you've been on a pretty interesting run for the last month or so. Like, what are you going to Vegas? Like, what's next? Like, what do you think you're going to do next?
Have you gotten your shots to travel into the United States?
So I'm double vaxxed. I haven't heard anything yet about the booster shot, but I don't think it's required for international travel. At this point, it's honestly just about cost. To go to Vegas would be a lot of money when you're traveling internationally. I know my podcast co-host Arun Jiggy Wiggy Singh is going to be there. So if I suddenly decide that I'm going to fly down, I could probably crash on the floor somewhere, as I am wont to do. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't planning on it.
Yeah, flights got weird too. Like, flights got weirdly expensive in the past month, I feel like, for that weekend in Vegas.
Yeah. Even domestic travel.
Maybe a lot of people booking it all of a sudden. So I could go out to the face-to-face event in Montreal. I probably won't do that one. For now, I'll just be playing a bit online and keeping my eyes on the upcoming schedule.
Do you have like goals beyond this? You've won a Modern Challenge. What's the next step? Is it Pro Tour?
I would love to go to the Pro Tour. I'm just going to be honest with you about that. And the conflict I'm having right now is like with Twitch, I'm like just on this cusp of getting partner, and I'm almost entirely known for doing modern stuff.
Right.
There's a ceiling on that, and there's a lot of equity in that market taken up by people like Doomwake and Spike and fantastic creators who are working hard all the time. Like, people on my stream don't take me seriously when I tell them, like, no, I don't think I'm the hardest working person, or if I am, I'm working hard. I'm doing my best, but these other people are amazing too, and they deserve all the support that they're getting right now. So for the moment with the stream, I want to hit that barrier of getting a partner, and then maybe I can start doing a little bit of arena stuff more, because there's so many more opportunities to qualify for the Pro Tour that way. Mm-hmm. And because there's potentially a bit bigger of an audience. I want to keep my focus on Modern because it's what I love. But at the same time, if I want to keep doing Magic in a sort of more competitive way, well, we'll see. We don't know what the state of organized play is going to look like in the future. Maybe it'll have Pioneer in it. They put together Pioneer Challenger decks or whatever those are called. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they did that. Maybe they're planning on it coming back. I don't know. That would be cool. I don't know that much about Pioneer anymore, but once upon a time, I loved that format. So,
Zach, if you want to make partner, have you heard of this game called Artifact?
You know what? I actually bought Artifact and played it for its whole 6-week run. I'm not surprised at all that game failed, but it was pretty okay for about a month. It was kind of fun.
Bring it back.
It's funny.
Yeah. Well, they still on the hook for $1 million prize pool tournament, I believe.
Let's just drag them.
Maybe they should just send everybody a $5 check or something and just move on with their life.
Exactly.
You bought this?
They already did that. They put the game out free.
Oh, that's right. Yep. Well, I can definitely say we certainly appreciate you having the chance to talk to you and getting to know you over the last year or so, since we've been in Discord together, and seeing you kind of pop up in more places and stuff has been awesome. And I definitely think you're one of the most entertaining people who's doing Magic content right now, and all the different things that you do. This interesting mix of like someone with a great sense of humor, ability to pull off like high production stuff, and also a good player is really cool. And so it's been fun to see that happen over the last couple of years. So I think that if you're still enjoying the ride, I hope that you just keep going as far as you kind of want to for now, and kind of see where it goes, right?
That's the plan.
Yeah, and where can people find you if they didn't happen to listen to the recent bonus episode? Where can they watch you stream and engage with you online?
Oh, it's so easy. I've made it easy for you people. It's very important in the social media world. Everything is at ManaCymbal, ManaCymbal, just like the instrument. If you Google that, you'll probably find my YouTube, my Twitter, and my Twitch. They are all linked together. They all have links for each other. It's very straightforward. So check that stuff out. If like sort of frequent raider and friend of everyone on Twitch, F Paulus, you haven't seen my Magic music videos, check those out. Those were a fun time. Somehow, when I was in the top 8 and playing those in between rounds, he was freaking out, being like, wait, I've never seen these before. How did I never see these before? I was like, oh, bad friend. As if I've listened to every episode of everything he's been on, which I haven't.
There's so much content out there,
There's
but like
too
I
much.
said, you're one of the people that cuts through. So it's awesome. We appreciate you coming on. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, you guys have a lot of spoilers to talk about, and I wish you the best with all of that. Trying to find the absolute greatest hits here for the next season. Don't miss out on the creepy Valley of the Dolls house. I forget exactly what the name is.
Yeah, that's what it's called. I think it's called House of Unfortunate Dolls or something.
Yeah,
The
something
artifact
like
that costs 5
It's
mana.
gonna-
I keep looking
Hey,
at that going.
1 mana to activate though. It
That's
looks
the
kind of
thing.
cracked in half, dude.
Yes.
Like, get it in play and it's just going to do really crazy stuff. Just read the fine print on it. The constructs are not constructs. Not quite. So read the fine print because we didn't end our episode. It's still good, but it's not as good as we thought it was.
It's the one 4+ mana card that I'd looked at. I keep looking at the spoiler going, this is not a card for me or really one that we would talk about that much, but I feel like there's something there for somebody more creative like you.
You
know?
can Oswald Philbend into it off of Frogmite.
Now you're talking.
That's a way to get that card in play.
Perfection.
I guess we just broke it in the breakdown.
I'm just saying. Anyway, thanks guys so much. Been a pleasure to see you all, and keep doing what you do because I think you're gonna hit some serious milestones.
We're working on it.
Well, we're one away from 150, and from there, who knows? The sky's the limit. Zach, always a pleasure. Hopefully, this is not the last time that you're on our show. But until then, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we are diving into our final installment of Crimson Vow spoilers. They're even more red than they were last week. Stay with us.
And we are back, guys. Who was that?
I don't know. It's the Canadian invasion.
I mean, I'm glad that they were on, and they seem like they know what they're talking about. No, thanks again, Zach. ManaCymbal, co-host of Serum Visions podcast, new co-host of Faithless Brewing, streamer, Twitch streamer, going for Twitch partner. If you want, I mean, look, there's a lot of streamers out there that are competing for your time. I would put ManaCymbal up there with the top tier of modern streamers right now in terms of entertainment, fun deck selection, just a good community. I really like ManaCymbal's streams, so engage with him and help him make partner.
Yeah. He provides coverage of decks that a lot of other streamers won't touch just because he's interested in what's fresh, what's different, what's being innovated on. And, if you're looking for an alternative take from a really strong player, you can't go wrong with the Modern Challenge winner.
I also forgot another content output from ManaCymbal is his the weekly videos of
This Week in Modern.
Well,
Modern.
that's not ManaCymbal. That's actually someone else. That's Gene Lanowar.
Gene Lanowar. Okay, got it. Well, Gene,
They look alike, but that's because all Canadians look the same. Their beady little eyes and their floppy mouths.
we have a lot of cards, and that was a nice long breakdown. I appreciate it, Zach, again. But let's get through some of these. So here's what I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about something a little bit weird. Okay, this is the Lee Shane card. I'm surprised that no one has really mentioned this. Geralf Visionary Stitcher, 2 and a blue, legendary human wizard, 1/4. Zombies you control have flying. Blue, tap, sacrifice another non-token creature. Create an XX blue zombie creature token where X is a sacrifice creature's toughness. Zombies are a thing. This is cost effective. It has good toughness. It turns a board of zombies into spirits. It dodges a lot of CMC based removal. The activated ability is dirt cheap. It synergizes with zombie decks and what they're trying to do. It's going to hose board stalls. I don't think it makes like modern zombies, like some big thing, but I think it's a very cool card. I'm surprised they didn't make it a mythic because EDH people, this is just like right into EDH zombies decks. And it's just a nice, cool rare. And I think it's cool. I think I'm going to see this on Arena. That's my thought about this card.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of sold. The reason why this card didn't impress me at first is because I figured this is not the thing that makes zombies a viable archetype in more high-powered formats. I don't think, at least, because it is 3 mana. That said, it dodges bolt.
I mean, you resolve this It doesn't get removed, and you're just like, here's my board full of zombies flying over things. And that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. This is one I don't have a comment on because I agree with your assessment of the card. It's all about fit, whether the deck is there or not. But I think on rate, like the card is very reasonable, especially for maybe some Pioneer fun or some version of Historic. Yeah, cool card for sure. Stan, what's on your mind?
Here's one. It's a red card. It costs 1 mana, and it's called End the Festivities. Single red sorcery, and the Festivities deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature they control.
This is such a stand pick for a spoiler card. You're like, this just kills everything.
It's a 1 mana wrath. I think that for 1 mana, there's a lot of effects like this, right? It also hits the opponent, which I think is kind of nice. It also hits planeswalkers, which I think is kind of nice. So it can have like a lot of weird situational value. A board full of little dinky nothings like in Historic Elves, or I don't know, maybe like non-suited up Memnites in Modern Hammer. The fact that it can kill either of the relevant Teferis after they've ticked down is something that occurred to me. Just seems like maybe it's a conditional sideboard card that reminds me a little bit of Lava Dart in that it can sometimes get you a 2-for-1. It doesn't give you 2 prowess triggers, but maybe it just doesn't go in a prowess style deck. But it's versatile because it does a couple different things. And why not? Let's set up spectacle in the process.
That's the main thing that I think is like cool about it, right? Is like you can do this and set up spectacle, but like I don't know if that's like enough to like carry us over the line. But like, yeah, it's a cheap card. It does something pretty novel. It does something novel enough for its cost. So why not?
It's probably just like the best 1 mana deal 1 to every creature card we have, because it also like dings walkers and I don't know, a point of damage to the face sometimes is the point you need to win the Modern Challenge.
I agree with that. I mean, yeah, I think this card's fine. I think it has a chance to be a sideboard card in certain builds too. Can we talk about another single red card? Ancestral Anger. It's a sorcery. It costs a single red. I did not hear anybody bring this up until Odin brought it up on our Slack this morning. It's a sorcery. Target creature gains trample and +X/+O until end of turn, where X is 1 plus the number of cards named Ancestral Anger in your graveyard. Draw a card. Now.
Oh, okay. There's the draw the card part. Okay.
Yes. Shane, I saw your note in here that was like, Dave, why would you play this card? It's terrible. It's because it says draw a card on it. It's literally the only reason that you would play this card. But we now have 3 spells in Modern and Historic for that matter, and Pioneer for that matter as well, that are single red mana cantrips that you can play to do various things. Those cards being Warlord's Fury, right, which is the first strike one. Then Crash Through, which is the one that gives your whole team trample, and this one that targets a creature, gives that creature trample and a very small buff. I think for prowess style decks, like this is in the conversation of something that could make a shell like that work, make it have more cantrips, more card velocity. It's got its pluses and minuses, right? It depends on what format you're in. I think in some cases this might be better than Bauble in the decks that are playing Bauble as part of that whole package, especially ones that aren't running Luris because they're mono red, for example. But I just think that this card is good enough to do that and might add a little bit more velocity to that. I don't think it makes prowess better anywhere overall necessarily, like a better meta fit than it is right now, but I think this card is the right power level, and these are the type of cards that you should remember because I think they're glue cards quite often just because they are cheap cantrips.
Yeah, I remember we were moderately excited about Fists of Flame from Modern Horizons 1, which is 1 in a red, instant, draw a card, and then target creature gets trample and +1/+0 for each card you've drawn this turn, and we thought that maybe had legs. I don't think that's particularly better than this card, and we thought Fists of Flame had potential, so yeah, cool.
This card is better than that card. I'm pretty sure that it is. Yeah, just because it's a single red. So we'll see. But you knew if there was anything that might possibly make prowess something, you knew I'd want to talk about it. Checking that off the list right now.
Yeah, I mean, I like that this actually plays well with Faithless Looting in Historic. I think it plays well with Dragon's Rage Channeler in every format that has Channeler, right? Like, if the card does nothing for you, you can bin it, and then maybe it gives you a little extra value later on when you cast another one.
I mean, the biggest downfall of this is that it needs a target. And that's actually the secret good mode of Crash Through, is that you can catch Crash Through without a target. But I generally think that this card is 100% better than Warlord's Fury, because giving first strike to your creatures is generally like not that important. So I think that if I was thinking about these cards, I would first look at Crash Through, then I would look at this card, then I would look at Warlord's Fury in that order at this point. But it could be a mix depending on what you want, because I don't think you really care. You don't really care about... It's nice that this one gives a little bit of a power buff. Like, there's not too many spells that do that in Prowess, but I don't think you particularly care on, like, maximizing the number of these in your graveyard, things like that.
Right, but that's where Faithless Looting comes in too, right? Because you can pitch dead copies of it early if you don't have a creature. I think this is, like, the most tempo version of this spell, where you might be in a deck that's a little threat light, but when you do have a threat, you kind of want it to be your win condition that you protect and suit up or, make big and evasive.
My only issue, or one of my issues, is just like this deck doesn't exist anymore. You know what I mean?
Well, it top 8 of the challenge today.
Well, you know what I mean, Dave. I mean, it's
but
there.
It did.
It's there. It's a deck that maybe people are just sleeping on, and maybe this is one little part of bringing it back. So
I just think that this is the type of card that is of the right rate. It just needs the right metagame for Modern in particular. But
all right.
You mean mono red prowess top 8 of the challenge, the Sunday challenge?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Let's talk about a card I think has modern chops, and I don't think there's a ton in this set, and I think this is a particularly interesting one, and it is Blood Fountain.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this card too. Good one.
Yeah, a black artifact, single black. When Blood Fountain enters the battlefield, create a blood token, and if you remember blood tokens from last week, they are artifacts that read artifact tokens, and they just read 1, pay 1 mana, tap it, discard a card, sacrifice the artifact, draw a card. And Blood Fountain, so it makes a blood token, which is an artifact. It is itself an artifact, and you can pay 3 and a black, tap it, sacrifice the Blood Fountain itself, and return up to 2 target creatures from your graveyard to your hand. The main thing is here, it's 2 artifacts for 1 mana, and that's just a really good rate in artifact synergy decks in Modern. And we know there's a lot of them. I think it's gonna have play in Urza. I think it'll probably have play in something like Asmo type decks.
I think it could see play in Affinity, depending on how you build that. Your Thought Monitor Frogmite decks right now could get a boost out of this.
Yeah, because imagine this scenario too, where it's like the return up to 2 target creatures from your graveyard to your hand for 3 and a black seems kind of lame. And then you're just like, well, if I get 2 like Frogmites back out of the grave, something with actual affinity for artifacts that like got killed, or you needed to chump block with, or something like that, or you traded with, then you're just like, hey, I'm gonna get these 2 spells back that I can instantly return to the battlefield because they have affinity for artifacts, and I have other things on the board right now. So perhaps it's a little bit win more, because if you have some stuff, then great, but it's just another added value you can do with Blood Fountain.
Dig it. I feel like we're on the lookout for cheap blood enablers, and Blood Fountain is one of them. The other card that may be worth discussing is Voldaren Epicure, which is the single red vampire. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and creates a blood token. So, we were talking about maybe on the radio, maybe offline, the blood version of Thraben Inspector, and I think this is kind of starting to look like that. It makes an extra piece of cardboard. It pings your opponent. I feel like if there's going to be a blood card that makes it into constructed play, it's probably one of these 2.
Yeah, I definitely
and
agree
maybe
with
others,
that.
But these 2 kind of have the best case for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is one that you can look to abuse a little bit more with your blinky kind of shells. Not to say that it would necessarily go in a ephemerate deck as we think of that now, but this deck more made me think of like, oh, it's a 1-drop that I can play in my deck that has Vial and like more like Taxes-y kind of thinking, where you're going to play Flicker Wisp with it or something like that. But it would be okay with Ephemerate as well. I just don't know what that overall shell looks like. But yeah, this is another one where it's a single mana card that makes 2 pieces of cardboard, and maybe sometimes a creature is more important to you. Maybe having 2 artifacts is sometimes more important to you, but I think that this is a good thing. And the funny thing is, I think that it doesn't really matter too much how good a blood token itself is by itself for this card to do stuff in Modern, just because of creating extra material, right? I feel that way, particularly about Blood Fountain, where we didn't even talk about like, then you're going to be able to sacrifice the blood token, because you're probably not. You're probably going to want to use it as a Mox Sapphire in Urza, or you're going to want to use it to power up Affinity or something like that. Here, I think there's a similar angle as well for some different deck, not with those same payoffs. But all right, so one card I did want to talk about, which is, I think, an interesting card, but I'm not sure exactly where it goes, though. Let's just keep with single mana spells and talk about Wash Away, which is a single blue instant that says that has a cleave cost of a generic blue, and then the full text says counter target spell that wasn't cast from its owner's hand. That wasn't cast from its owner's hand is in brackets. So basically what this is it's a cancel if you pay the cleave cost, and in fact, that is how much cancel costs.
Is that a cancel effect, Dave?
It is a cancel effect, and it costs the same as cancel. And then, this is a blue mana that lets you, for a single mana, counter target spell that wasn't cast from its owner's hand. So Modern is a format where this happens all the time, right?
Modern is a format.
Yeah.
Can we agree on that?
We can. And it happens all the time. It includes flashback. It includes suspended cards, cascaded into cards, foretell. I think this is probably designed as like a foretell kind of, spoiler card for standard. But there's lots of other angles where this might come up. The problem is, there's another card in Modern that's reasonably close to this called Nyx that costs a blue for an instant that says counter target spell if no mana was spent to cast it. So it's not the exact same overlap, but there's some. What do you guys think about? I think
this is a card that reads better than it is, even though I also was going to put it on the list if you didn't. Do you know what I mean? It's just like you said, it's one of those things where I think it's too narrow an effect, but the cancel backup is really nice. That's the only thing that makes this, I think, viable at all. Is just like, but like you said, no one's playing Nyx. Even with all of the Cascade style decks out there, no one's saying, well, I should have a couple Nyx in my sideboard to shore up those matchups. They feel like they need those. So it's like, what deck is going to run this that isn't running Nyx? And maybe it's just a one-of for testing or something like that, and we see what happens. But I don't know if this has what it takes, but it's a cool option.
Yeah, this card just keeps reminding me of Ceremonious Rejection, though, where it's like that was a card that saw play for a long time, and then we it's gone now because colorless decks aren't as big at the moment, but it feels like this might be a better use case than no mana being spent to cast it, although there's certainly a lot of spells right now that you could use Nyx against. I mean, you could counter an elemental evoke trigger, you could, other stuff, so... But I still think that it is all about having cancel as a backup here that makes it possible to consider. I don't understand. This seems like a card that you would consider playing. Like you're someone who plays more counter spells than Shane, for example. Yeah, like how does this strike you?
It strikes me as pretty bad. The only reason I would have thought about it is if the companion rule had never changed. If this did everything that you said and also tagged companions, which are the most popular card type in Magic, it feels like to me, then maybe we can talk. But I think everything that you listed off as what this tags, whether it's Cascade, whether it's Suspend, what have you, we have other better cards that do that too. And I would always just rather play Counterspell in Modern. And if I wanted, conditional counters that do a certain thing, like we have Force of Negation, we have Archmage's Charm, we have, I almost said Twiddle Storm, but...
Spell Pierce.
Well, not Spell Pierce, but the one with Storm.
Oh.
Flusterstorm?
From MH1. Flusterstorm.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I think this is... Yeah, this is a card that I think needs a new card type to actually be scary for this to be worthwhile, but until that happens, I just think we have better counters.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Shane?
Yeah.
Your turn.
All right. A card that I don't understand why no one's talking about it. And this one, I think, another one I don't think is quite modern playable, but I think it's fine on Pioneer, fine in Historic. Eruth, Tormented Prophet. She is 1 and a red for a legendary human wizard. 2/4. If you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead, you may play those cards this turn. So this essentially reads, in decks that I think would play it, if you would draw a card, draw 2 cards instead. I think a 2/4 for 3 survives a lot of removal. I think this is a cool card. I think there's plenty of ways to use this effect. I mean, just imagine this in any kind of deck with Opt, any kind of deck that has any kind of cantrip whatsoever, Faithless Looting in Historic. It's just like you are seeing a lot of cards with this, and it's just a static. Like, if you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Instead, you may play those cards that you can play lands. This is not a cast thing like a lot of those drawbacks. Like, this is not a lame effect. I think this is quite powerful. I think this is going to do some things, and I'm surprised that I haven't heard more people talk about this, because Izzet mages love drawing cards and even exiling the top cards of their libraries.
Here's my worry about this card, is that it reminds me a little bit of the similarly casted cost card from Ikoria.
Oh, okay.
There's the card
Ryl the Everwise.
Yeah. It reminds me of a similar thing there, where it was kind of like that card was never quite as useful as people thought it was going to be.
So the difference with Ryl is that it needed you to discard a card for that to be good, whereas every time you discarded, you drew instead. This just replaces your draw. This is like Dredge and Izzet.
Yeah. But the problem is you only can play... I mean, the big thing is you can only play these cards for this turn. And so you don't get to sandbag anything. It's tough, right? Because what cards are... What is your deck that you are pretty much always happy playing the cards off the top of your deck? You're not playing counter spells in that deck.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're not playing... you have to watch what you're doing. You're not playing a lot of interaction in that deck that's not burn, you know what I mean? Because you can't sandbag an Unholy Heat until there's a good target. So I think there is some awkwardness there with the only till this turn.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a combo deck that wants this, where you want like a literal 2-card combo, something like Twin or Kiki Jiki, to just, you line up these 2 pieces, you're drawing through your deck really, really fast until you can find them, and then you just win on the spot.
That's a lot of mana, for sure, to have those.
Well, yeah.
Right, but this also helps you get to the mana, too.
Yeah, I think I just see this as like a Izzet spells deck in Historic specifically that can use looking at 2 cards instead of 1. And I think it's good.
Yeah, maybe it's in a proactive spells deck, one that doesn't run counters, but rather as like burn spells and cantrips.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe you pair it with like Crackling Drake or 5-mana Ral.
Yeah, I mean,
or other
you're
cards
getting
that like actually care about the exile.
That's
zone.
a really good point, Stan. It's like, yeah, you're filling up the exile zone fast. That's a big Crackling Drake.
Yeah, I like that idea. That makes a lot of sense to me with this possibly. Doesn't feel like modern power level with that kind of shell, but it could be, Cave Dan has been having a lot of success lately with Is It Phoenix, No Phoenixes. He's playing these kind of like blue-red cantrippy decks with Crackling Drake instead. And so maybe, if we're thinking that way, maybe this is the type of thing that helps you go even farther, get more card selection, etc.
Yeah. My favorite part about Cave Dan's deck is that he calls it, is it Hotline Bling?
Why?
He made the, I don't know why, but that's what he calls it. He made into the Pro Tour with that deck.
Yeah, and he also came in second or won the Pioneer Challenge this weekend. I thought, was it fourth?
Top 4.
Top 4. Okay.
In the Pioneer Challenge.
Yep.
I've never said this on the podcast before, but I see this Eruth, the Tormented Prophet, and I just want to make it my commander. And I'll probably never say that again.
Yeah. Stan, what's the next card you would like to talk about?
How about Cradle of Safety? 1 and a blue, enchantment aura, flash to enchant a creature you control. When it enters the battlefield, enchanted creature gains hexproof and +1/+1. Is this just a shoo-in for Aura's decks? Because it's both a protection spell to protect your important Aura's enablers, but also a buff spell.
I think it costs too much, and the buff isn't good enough. Like next turn, like I think for 2 mana you want like an ethereal armor effect where it's like +6/+6 or something like that. Like I see what you're saying, where it's like, yeah, you're not paying for the Aura Chain, you're paying for the protection plus a little bit of a buff. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's just maybe a little bit too much mana.
So I think that this could see play as like a 1 or 2 of, in the way that I used to think about blue-white auras anyway. I kind of like this better than Karametra's Blessing, which is a card that saw a lot of play in that deck, because the only problem with Karametra's Blessing is that saved you from Wraths as well. and this one doesn't because it only grants hexproof. But probably because this lets you draw a card if you have like your core spirit, your Spirit Walker,
Spirit Dancer.
Spirit Dancer. Not my spirits just walk. If you have that, or you have you have your dwarf guy out whose name I'm totally forgetting out. SRAM. You have SRAM out. You get to draw a card off of it. That's the only thing that I'm thinking about, is that since it's a payoff there, you get to draw cards off of it as well. And sometimes that's better to have around. So I could see trying it out in there. I
just feel like it should cost like 1.5 mana. I know it's not an option.
Well, I think that having one in there is probably okay. I mean, this deck used to run, an aura that gave +1/+0 and unblockable in the deck, which was like fine, but I'd probably rather have one of these just because it's more defensive in that particular deck, and just worry about getting flying later. Can I pop in with another card here, since I do have a card that there is an auras theme in this set, and I think there is another card that actually kind of rates in auras, and it is not an enchantment, but it is called Stormchaser Drake.
Yes, I was going to put this card down, and then I saw that you did.
Yeah.
For the same reason, I think.
So Stormchaser Drake is a single generic in a blue for a 2/1 flyer that says whenever Stormchaser Drake becomes the target of a spell you control, draw a card. I cannot believe this card costs 2 mana. Can I just say that, like, off the top? That is a lot of text, and it has evasion for 2 mana. If I was costing this, I would assume it would be 2 generic in a blue. It's like a Wind Drake with an extra line of text and -1 toughness. That's pretty good for 2 mana, I think. And one of the things that I found was the most annoying about auras quite often was, I'm in a landlock. I'm drawing a ton of cards, but until I get my, something that get Mystic Flight or whatever, until I get something that gives my creature evasion, I'm not going anywhere. This card can just give evasion, and so you can suit this up with all the glitters and just power it home by itself, which is something that was tough to do, especially with like SRAM and things like that.
I can buy it.
Yeah. I also wonder if this card, because it's not just about auras, if there's some other deck that wants a heroic trigger, draw a card with a flyer. I don't think we had that in Theros block anywhere, so I don't, I'm trying to think about, like, is a card like this already exist? The old heroic deck didn't have access to that, so I don't think there is a card in Modern that does this right now, or in Historic that does this right now. And so I think it could be good enough.
Shane, do you have any Auras cards that
no,
we can package?
I don't. I have a Spirit. There's some Spirits I think that are okay. There's some wolves I think are okay. No, you know what? I do have an aura, but it's not for auras. Let's talk about Curse of Hospitality.
Okay.
2 in a red.
Okay.
Aura Curse. Enchants player. Creatures attacking enchanted player have trample. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to enchanted player, that player exiles the top card of their library until end of turn. The creature's controller may play that card, pay mana, blah blah blah. Is this anything? Am I a madman?
I just don't know what deck this card goes in. Like, what deck wants this card?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It seems powerful.
I don't know.
But I don't know who wants this, and I don't know what... Like, this isn't a main deck card, right? Like, there's no world where that's true.
I don't know.
Right?
I feel like I'm missing something on this. I think I've seen people say, like, this is, like, the first playable curse or something like that, and I just don't know. I think it's cool, but I don't know. I just wanted to see if you all had anything on that. But it doesn't seem like you do, so it's fine. I think it's too expensive.
Read this card. I think it's it's tough to. I think it would be tough to have this cost less than 3. I don't know why you would do that.
Yeah.
I think it's a cool card. I don't know what deck this goes into.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's just like it's a cool card, but like in search of what kind of home. But we'll potentially find out.
I think I know where this goes. Red limited decks.
Right. Perfect.
I think this
it's a bomb.
This is a commander card too.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure.
Sure.
Because you're cursing somebody and having some
fun.
fun.
You got a million manas to spend on all your spells.
Right.
Can we talk about a real card? I think. Sure. Cemetery Prowler, 1 GG for a wolf. It's 3/4 with vigilance, because why not? 3/4 vigilance for 1 green. Whenever it ETBs or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard. Spells you cast cost 1 generic mana less for each card type they share with cards exiled with Sanitary Prowler. So this is that series of... This is the green version of the series. Surprise, the green one is probably the best. And
I don't know about that.
I mean, I think that this is good in that I think it... So the green does this kind of stuff a lot. And I typically have fallen into this trap. If you are a long-time listener of this podcast, I have found myself falling into the trap of like, oh, it's making my stuff cost less. I can more quickly fill the board. But I think what's good about this is both hindering some strategies and boosting your own. I don't think this is like a modern playable card, but I think that it's good on ETB. It's a repeatable effect that can hurt graveyard strategies. It can make your spells cheaper to cast. So sure, why not?
I kind of feel like this is maybe a nice threat, almost in like the Tarmogoyf slot of some black-green style deck, where you have interaction that you can put certain cards into people's graveyards, whether it's with hand disruption or removal. Yep. Whereas, like, I wouldn't want this in a stompy deck where I'm just trying to play as many creatures as possible, because unless the opponent is putting cards into their yard or you're killing creatures in combat, chances are you're not actually getting much of an effect. It also, what I don't like about this card that I think requires like some setup on your part, is that you don't want to hit lands with it. And that's one of the most common cards to just end up in the graveyard organically.
Not in Historic, I wouldn't say.
In Modern it is, but yeah.
Oh, sure.
I don't know. And like Fabled Passage is a card in Historic that a lot of decks play.
Yeah.
Cycling lands exist.
I mean, I just think it's an option. I mean, I honestly don't know if it's like really better than something like a Scavenging Ooze. Like Scavenging Ooze, he's played main deck because of the popularity of graveyard strategies in Historic, and so I don't know if I'd play this over that.
There also is no better 2-drop in green in Historic, really.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? And
you have that Wolf, that GG 3/3 that draws a card when you swing with 6 power.
The Packleader.
Yeah.
The Packleader.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't think that's better than Scavenging Ooze, because Scavenging Ooze, if you're playing against, like, it's going to be bigger than anyway, that's a different discussion. But I think that's part of the reason that sees a lot of main deck plays, that it's just the best value at 2. I do think this card is really good on, like, it's really hard to argue with this card on rate. It's a 3/4 vigilance for 3 that does something. I feel like the cost reduction mechanic's not going to happen like very frequently at all. Just my gut is that it's not going to come up that often. I could be wrong, but we'll see. We'll see.
Dave, which Cemetery variant do you think is better? Is it on this list?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The more that I looked at all these cards for a long time and was like, one of these has to be good, right? Like, and maybe it is the green one, but I kind of think that the blue one is better. Because
the Illuminator?
Yeah. So Cemetery Illuminator for generic blue for a 2/3 flyer. It exiles a card from a graveyard, but it says you may look at the top card of your library at any time. Once each turn, you may cast a spell from the top of your library if it shares a card type with the card exiled with Cemetery Illuminator. I do wish that it had flash. It feels like it should have flash. It doesn't have flash, but it draws you cards. Like, I kind of feel like that's almost going to be, if you get one card off of this, like, that's great, right? You get one extra draw, essentially. I think that's pretty good. If you get 2, I think you're really doing it. It has flying. It's a good card that just kind of fits in with the shell that's already there as far as spirits go, I think, and just kind of, you can go to town. So that's part of why I feel like I like this one better. It's still a hit with Coco if someone's playing, Bant at this point, which doesn't really happen that much. But sure. I just feel like this one might be better.
Yeah, what's interesting, Stan, I think you mentioned this when I was talking about the green one, is that you were like, well, the opponent has to have something in their deck. Like, when are they going to have a creature because you run no interaction? Remember that this is a card from a graveyard. So it can be your own. Mm-hmm. So like when I was thinking about this card, I was like, well, I play no interaction in spirits, basically. Like, you're just kind of like hoping to fill the board and fly over them. And then I was like, well, there's probably a good reason I would have a spirit in my graveyard. Like I would maybe have popped like one of the protection spirits or something like that, or just like attacked into something or blocked with
Killed
something.
one of your creatures with removal. Yeah.
And so I think there's plenty of options for you to have a creature to exile with this card, and then hopefully get a few extra draws off the top. So
yeah, I feel like it's possible. I also like the red one, but I just like the red one because it's 2 mana. Like that's the only reason I kind of have that one on my radar a little bit. It's the cheapest one of the cycle. I think that its ability will come up maybe even less than the green ones does in some ways, but I just like that it's a Harsh Mentor, I guess, but Harsh Mentor was never that good. So
is that the cemetery one?
Yeah, cemetery gatekeeper. Yeah.
Is that? I thought that was on our list. I can't.
It's on our list. It's up above. I'm just bundling them all together so we can keep going.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think this is just like Harsh Mentor effect. People are like, and I think it's worse, like in Modern especially, because like there's a lot of activated abilities and stuff like that happening in Modern, and I just don't think Cemetery Gatekeeper has it because it's just way too conditional for not enough damage.
Yeah. So I think I prefer the blue one. My money's on the blue one, I guess, is what I would say.
How many are you going to buy?
16
on Arena.
Yeah, I'm buying them all on Arena. Stan, you kind of sat out that cemetery round. Where do you want to take us on a different direction?
As long as we're talking about flying spirits, one of the cards that I was looking at a lot is Dreamshackle Geist. 1 blue for a flying spirit. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose up to 1, tap target creature, or target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. And I was thinking about, what this could do in a spirits deck if it ever finds its way in there. Because on the one hand, your spirits already have evasion. So like the tap target creature doesn't necessarily do anything. But that second clause of target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, I feel like is a good way to maybe stabilize without having to hold back blockers. Mm-hmm. Especially because like spirits, they're powerful, but they're fairly small. They'll often lose on defense. So being able to maybe prevent your opponent from attacking with an extra creature every turn could be enough to, I don't know, get you out of parity or present a faster clock than whatever the opponent's doing.
I just feel like this one is so much worse than the one that already exists. Nebelgast Herald.
I don't know. I mean, yes and no. Like what Stan's saying is true, where it's like the doesn't untap during its next untap step, I think is actually pretty huge.
Yeah, but Nebelgast Herald has flash and this doesn't.
Yeah.
So you can tap it during their upkeep, and then it's the same. Functionally, it's the same thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that.
But if you have rattle chains, everything has flash.
Well, that too. Yeah, I mean, totally true.
I mean, Nebelgast Herald's a 2/1. This is a 3/1. That will add up more, of course. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if either of them. I mean, they compete for the same slot, right? I'm not sure if I do think this does find play over Nebelgast. I do agree with that, but
yeah, they play well together, right? If you have that out and you have this ready to attack, you cast a creature, you tap it down. This makes sure it stays tapped.
Right.
Yeah, but then you only have room for so many 3-drops in that deck. Like
right.
even like the Pioneer Power Level 1 or something like that, right?
But oops, all 3-drops. That's a deck.
Good point.
It's a great deck. Great deck.
They both come down off Coco.
Yes,
so.
Which is good for sure.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Hold on. Here's what I got. This is my favorite color. Inspired Idea, 2 and a blue sorcery. It's also a cleave sorcery. It has the cleave cost is 3 blue. So you may cast this for its cleave cost. If you do, remove the words in square brackets. And it reads, draw 3 cards. Shane, draw 3 cards for 2 and a blue. That sounds really good. Oh, wait. Bracket, your maximum hand size is reduced by 3 for the rest of the game. Here's what we're talking about, though.
You can only cast one of these. How weird is that? Go ahead.
Oh, wow. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Reduced by 3. Okay, that makes it a lot worse. I'm ignoring the cleave cost.
Sure.
Because I think the good part is the 2 and a blue default cost.
Yeah. Just to say really quickly, the cleave cost, just so we're all clear, is at rate for an uncommon at instant. 3 blue should get you 3 cards at instant speed. It used to be, it was an uncommon. It was called Jace's Ingenuity. But anyway.
This is not great for the cleave cost. But, okay, the hand reducing thing I think is actually totally fine for like a Phoenix style deck, I think. Because you're operating with a small amount of cards. You want to cast them as soon as you draw them. You're just churning through your deck. You're casting a lot of cheap spells. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just too dangerous. Maybe it's too expensive, even in a deck like that, because you're like, when am I going to find time to cast this 2 in a blue, draw 3 type thing?
What if you have resolved a Seagate Restoration or have a Reliquary Tower in play?
Sure. Perfect.
That's the combo, right? That's the dream?
I mean, I don't know if a 3 for 3 is like a dream. You know what I mean? Like, we could just be casting some Treasure Cruises in Pioneer or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's the big problem for me, is like the deck where, we have access to Treasure Cruise, and then in the other format we have access to like Faithless Looting, which is like that Faithless Looting I'd just rather have anyway for as far as draw spells go. And then, this and another card in this set that I wanted to talk about both compete a little bit with Expressive Iteration, where it's kind of like, which one is better there? I kind of am like, I don't know. I definitely looked at this card for a long time being like, I am missing something here. What am I missing here?
You're missing how good it is, Dave.
Yeah.
What if we played with Hazaret the Fervent?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
They're going.
I love Hazaret.
Yeah. All right. Can we talk about a weird card?
Please.
Faithbound Judge. The Judge. 1 white for a creature spirit soldier that has Defender, Flying, Vigilance. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Faithbound Judge has 2 or fewer judgment counters on it, put a judgment counter on it. As long as Faithbound Judge has 3 or more judgment counters on it, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. Okay.
I'm using my purple gems as my my judgment counters.
Yeah, these are judgment counters. Disturb. 5 white. So a 7 mana cost Disturb. Oh, by the way, it's a 4/4 flyer. So it's a big card if you get to attack with it.
It's a big blocker.
Yes, that too. And then the Disturb cost is 5 white, and it turns into Sinner's Judgment. It's a white or a curse that says enchant player. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a judgment counter on Sinner's Judgment. If there are 3 or more judgment counters, enchanted player loses the game. If Sinner's Judgment will be put in graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. People are kind of into this card, like on Twitter and stuff. It seemed like it, but certainly for Modern, I'm like, no, this is not doing anything for you there. No way. But I mean, 7 is so much, and a 4/4 that just dies as soon as you get 3 judgment counters on it seems kind of, I don't know.
You know what Sinner's Judgment side reminds me of? Approach of the Second Sun.
Oh, sure.
Where it's like this expensive finisher in a white control deck that doesn't actually win you the spot after you resolve it. You have to spend 7 mana and then wait a little bit.
At least you gain 7 life with Approach of the Second Sun, so you possibly,
Exactly.
I don't really get why people are excited about this card. Like, I mean, it doesn't win on the spot. 5 white's wild. You can like bounce it with anything. Like any enchantment removal can just wipe this thing off the board. Like, I must be missing something, or maybe it's just like people want to have a funny win con.
Yeah.
And like a 3 mana 4/4 Defender doesn't even seem playable. Like, I just don't get it.
You know what I always say? Judge not, lest ye be judged.
Mm-hmm. We're judging the judge. All right.
My favorite episode
That's
of
good
that
title.
movie podcast.
Title.
All right. How about, I'm surprised no one's mentioned this one yet. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben.
Seems like a cool card when I read it.
Is she new?
New to me. I don't own any.
I mean, it's now in Pioneer, right? That's the thing.
Yeah. And I think that's good. That's awesome. I mean, it's a great card. It's a nice tool for all 3 of these formats to have, I think,
And jokes aside, this is a big get for Pioneer because the best deck in that format is Izzet Phoenix. Arguably one of the best decks. So having this really cheap creature that is really good against Phoenix style decks, I think is pretty huge, and could maybe help balance that format a little bit or make white a little stronger.
Yeah. I think it's a great reprint. I think that it's kind of needed. I think that it probably helps a little bit in Standard as well. So it's a good card. Thalia is great. How about Ascendant Packleader, which we haven't talked about at all? Is this just a Standard card? What's this card? This is the green that's a 2/1 that it enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it if you control a permanent with mana value 4 or greater. And then every time you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, it gets another counter on it. Is this anything?
So I think it's a Standard card where you're playing like Essica's Chariot.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe in Historic with like Questing Beast. But even in these like green stompy decks, you want to go up the curve. And I would rather play Pelt Collector on turn 1 than this.
Yeah.
This is like a cheap spell that maybe you cast on turn 5 when you double spell. Or on turn 3 if you know you're going to play a 4-drop the next turn.
Totally makes sense to me. All right, we only have a couple of cards left here on the list. One I wanted to bring up that I think we talk about really for a short amount of time is Lantern of the Lost. Another Lantern.
And what a Lantern. I think this might be one of the sneakiest, best cards in the set.
I agree, although there's some nuance to this card. So why don't you read it real quick, Stan?
For a single generic mana, it is an artifact, and when it enters the battlefield, exile target card from a graveyard, and then it has 1 tap, exile Lantern of the Lost, exile all cards from all graveyards, then draw a card. So you have to exile it. You're not replaying this with Luris.
Right.
Which sucks. I wish you could.
Yeah. And that's sort of one of the problems, right? So there's kind of like a triangle now of cards like this in Modern, at least. So there, and actually in Historic, I guess too, because Relic of Progenitus is available in Historic too, right?
True,
Not in Pio.
true.
So we got Relic of Progenitus. We have the
Soul Guide Lantern,
and then we have Lantern of the Lost. The difference between Soul Guide Lantern and this one is that Soul Guide Lantern only exiles target player's graveyard, but the draw a card is a separate line. So when you exile their graveyard, you do not get to draw a card. So this one has basically Relic's ability, which is sacrifice and tap this to get rid of it and exile all cards from all graveyards and draw a card. But what you don't get from this that you get from Relic is tapping it to get rid of a card every turn. But with Lantern of the Lost, you get to pick off a specific card that is really troublesome that's in their graveyard right now, the same way that you can with Soul Guide Lantern. So weird. And like you said, Stan, can't play this with Luris. Also, can't play this in a deck with a lot of graveyard payoffs because you're going to exile your own graveyard when you activate this.
There's one other thing that I think makes this, like, in the fight against Soul Guide Lantern, is that you have to pay the 1 on this to exile graveyards. Soul Guide, you don't. Soul Guide is like Tormod's Crypt. Once it's down, you can just tap it for free.
Yeah, good point.
So it's an interesting trifecta, and this is one where I'm curious how it plays out, because when Soul Guide was spoiled, I didn't necessarily read that as like, oh, this is going to replace Relic in some decks. There's a tension actually now between those two cards, because Soul Guide did prove to be quite good, especially against cards with escape.
And it's really good also because with Luris is the other thing that's big about Soul Guide Lantern, is that you can play it with Luris.
And Relic for that matter, yeah.
Yeah. So, cool card. I think it's definitely a card that people are going to have. They're going to play. It's just another entry in good graveyard hate cards.
How good or not good is Reckless Impulse? 1 in the red sorcery, exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. I mean, it's like a weird light up the stage type thing. It's like expressive iteration at home type thing. It's just like, I don't know. It's interesting though, right?
I mean, here's the thing about this card. I think it's like almost there. It's a light up the stage that you can play not in aggressive decks, right? But we already kind of have a light up the stage that you can play in not aggressive decks, and that is what Shane said. It's expressive iteration. But the problem with expressive iteration is that you can, you can't play expressive iteration on turn 2. You can play this card on turn 2. And so there's this kind of weird mana curve thing going on here. The other thing is that if you happen to be in a deck with cost reducers like Storm or something, you can reduce the cost of this and cast it for 1 red. You can't do that with expressive iteration. I only say that because one of the first decks I wondered if there was a chance to play this could be Storm or something like that, especially when it only costs a single red to do it, and you get just a bunch of extra cards really fast. But I don't think Storm really works that way, so I'm not a big believer. Needless to, or kind of like summing this all up, I kind of think it's not good enough to get there in our formats. But curious if you guys disagree.
I think this is better than Light Up the Stage, which expressive iteration already is, but I think this is just like outclasses that card too.
It costs 2. That's a big problem. Like in the decks where I play Light Up the Stage, I don't want to play this card.
No, I wouldn't play this in Mono Red Prowess.
I wouldn't play this in Boros, Burn, and in Historic myself.
I think any deck that plays Light Up the Stage should be playing expressive iteration, like should bend its mana to play expressive iteration. Right? Like I don't know if Light Up the Stage is a good enough reason to be mono red.
It's not the reason you're mono red. You're mono red because you want to play a bunch of burn spells.
And you want to play like 16 deck. Lands.
Yeah,
and play burn spells.
Exactly. And so this is a card that gives you, it's one of the only options you have for card advantage. there. And so I think if you're doing damage to your opponent in a way that's fast, Light of the Stage is totally fine. One mana for 2 cards is extremely tough to beat.
And they do linger until the next turn, which this does too.
Right.
Which is cool.
Yeah. I just think the main thing that I keep coming back to with this is you can cast this when you have nothing else to do on turn 2 in a deck that is slightly more interactive, control-y than aggressive.
Yeah. And play lands off of it. Like that's kind of the thing that makes both Iteration and Light Up the Stage so excellent.
Right.
That's one of the ways you get your 2-for-1 is just playing lands.
Sequencing with Expressive Iteration is quite challenging, though. I always find, first off, you got to remember not to play a land before you do it. You got to remember you can't cast it on turn 2. Like all of those things, you got to make sure that you want to be able to use this whatever spell goes into the exile zone. So whether it's a land, whether it's a spell, So I think this card's like almost there, but I don't think it's quite there.
Time will tell. That was a lot of cards.
It was. I don't think we have any more to talk about, right?
Who cares? We've been doing this for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's maybe 1 or 2, but what's your favorite card from this whole set?
Mine's easy. Mine's Chandra just Dressed to Kill is my favorite card in the
Really?
set. Yeah.
Yes.
Favorite.
Man.
You said favorite. I
That's
think
a good point.
I think it has the most upside in some ways, personally. I'd like Zach's call out about that Nightmare House of Dolls or whatever. I feel like that's a combo piece that someone other than us is going to enjoy building a deck out of.
Sure.
So I think there's something with that card. Dollhouse of Horrors, it's called, actually. But I think for me, my favorite card, or the card I'm most interested in seeing what happens, is Chandra.
Is it weird that I'm going to play like an Eruth deck? Like with the exile the cards instead of draw them thing? I just think that's cool. It's going to just be like Burgie again, where it's like not going to actually do anything for me. But
well, at least you already have all the cards you'd want in there. Just swap out Burgie and put this card in and see if it's any better. Is that your favorite, Shane?
I think it's just like the most. It's like the ones with the most potential to me. I mean, I think Blood Fountain is going to do something in Modern. I think Dread Fugue is pretty cool. It's going to see some play. So I think those are cheap and good. I think Eruth is just like an interesting design.
Yeah, for me, it's either Chandra. I mean, I still think Path of Peril is interesting. If you like spells that kill creatures. I also like that there's a bunch of Dracula cards. I'll just say Dracula. It's my favorite card.
Last card that we didn't get to talk about that I'm just going to name, Graf Reaver. I think that's a real card.
Yeah, it's a card. I like that one too.
Oh, you know what? I got it. My favorite card, Storm Carved Coast. Is it Slowland?
You think you're going to be playing that?
I don't know, but a nice, cool new gold card that sometimes comes in untapped.
Seems fair to me.
All right, Sam, get us out of here.
That does wrap up this week's show. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. And if you use Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. You should also do the same for any of Zach Ryl, aka ManaCymbals content, whether it's the Serum Visions podcast, whether it's Faithless Brewing, whether it's the This Week in Modern video series. Check out his work, and we'll have links to all of that in the show notes today. If you'd like to submit a question to our podcast, you can tweet us at @TheDiveDown, all one word. You can email thedivedown@gmail.com. We read those. Or you can submit an audio question via podinbox.com/thedivedown. Your question may appear on a future episode of the show. If you'd like to support The Dive Down, you can join our Patreon over at patreon.com/thedivedown. Or support us while playing Magic with a Mana Traders account. If you sign up for Mana Traders using promo code TheDiveDown2021, you'll get 15% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, get out there and abolish daylight savings time.
Let's do it.
Returning to the show, Tanner.
What's a Hoff?
It's an actor.
Hoff off the
That's
Hoff.
right.
Dave Hoffbarger here, the Godfather.
Tanner.